Network Automation Nerds podcast. Hey guys, Eric here. Before we go on to the show, I want to let you guys know this episode was recorded in November 2021. Therefore, you will hear Jason talk about some of the charity work and projects he's working on at that time. Don't worry, you can still make contributions to the same charities if you like. The links will be in the show notes. Now, back to the show. Hello, and welcome to Network Automation Nerds podcast, a podcast about network automation, network engineering, Python, and a whole lot of technology topics. I'm your host, Eric Cho. Today on the show, we'll be talking to Jason Gooley, technical evangelist, author, speaker, philanthropist, founder, and host of Metal DevOps. He's also known as the godfather of network automation. I know he's embarrassed by that title, and that's why I said it. We should all blame Sylvia. But anyways, he is. So no further introduction required besides that title. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited because I know we've been going back and forth and talking and tweeting, and I've never been able to actually get you on camera to talk with you. So this works out really well.
Oh, likewise, man. Likewise. I've been following your work, and what stood out the most about you, Jason, besides all the accomplishments, right? They're all grand and obviously speaks for themselves. But what speaks to me the most was your bias for action, your positive attitude. And I think part of that comes from you being an avid reader, should I say. You know, it seems like you are. So you read a lot, you learn a lot about other people's experience and apply to your own life. So today I was thinking maybe we could do something different. Since you've been sharing a lot of your experience on other podcasts, I don't want to repeat those. I want to do something different about you recommending some of the books. I've always wondered what's on people's book list, and I think yours would be super interesting to do so. And so that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna have Jason recommend a few non-technical or technical books, and we could all take something away from, kind of peek into his brain a little bit and see what makes him tick and what makes him be able to set the right mindset and positive attitude.
Yeah, you know what? It's so funny. I think I do listen to a lot of audiobooks as well. So it's not just reading books, but when we're pressed with time, we're driving everywhere and doing things like that. Audiobooks has become kind of my new passion and hobby. And they were running a sale on Audible. I can't remember what it was. Oh. It was like 24 credits. You get 24 books for like a flat fee, and you have like a year to use them or something like that, or 2 years to use them. And then you can actually download the book and own the book after. You're essentially buying 24 books up front.
Right.
So I'm doing this. I started going through 3 or 4. I did the trials and stuff. I'm like, all right, I got to figure out which ones I really like and which ones would be good to listen to. And what was funny is when what first started me on this, I mentioned it. I have a good friend named Jim Cook, who's the guy who got me into networking and all these other things and helped me kind of down that path and journey. Right. And one of the things he gave me was a CD of a gentleman named Earl Nightingale, and he was one of the original Tony Robbins kind of motivational type speakers, and he did one called "Lead the Field." Okay. If I have any advice for anybody out there, if you want to look in the mirror and evaluate yourself on how well you're doing or what you can do better to progress and do different things and learn, it would be listen to Lead the Field. Because when I listen to that, there are times where I'm like, I'm not probably doing all that I should be. And then there's like, I'm doing pretty good. But it was one of these amazing audiobooks that just really does set your mind for success. And I just absolutely love it. So Lead the Field is probably my absolute favorite audiobook. I'm sure it was an audio tape and stuff like that transversed into 50 different things and eventually became an Audible book. But that would be one that I would say definitely check out, would be Lead the Field by Earl Nightingale. Another one that I started reading on, and it was actually, there's a Stephen Covey who makes one called Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, right?
Yep.
Successful people. Yep. There's another one, but what led me to that one, which was funny, was there's another one that he did called 7 Habits of Highly Successful Families.
Oh, okay. So that must have been like a follow-on to his first successful book.
It was a follow-on. Right. But I was listening to that and just how to. I mean, I have my daughter's gonna be 7, my son's 3.5, And I'm trying to find a nice way to just, make sure that we all stay communicating and connected, because that's the biggest thing in this day and age is communication. And in the day of the life of tablets and phones and games and all this, we want to make sure that we're kind of here, And
Right.
I listened to that book. It was only like 3.5 hours, and it was incredible. So then I went back and I got the highly effective leaders, I think it was one of the ones I was looking at, and then highly effective people.
There's probably like a
there's
bunch
10
of
of them, dude. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
exactly.
But they're great. So I started listening to that, and then one that I love, Tim Ferriss. And if you're familiar with Tim Ferriss,
Yes.
he has all
The
the
4-hour stuff.
4-hour everything, 4-hour body, 4-hour work week, 4-hour
That's
chef.
right.
4-hour chef was probably one of my favorites. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason being is it gives you a lot of insight into how to do different things, like the 80-20 rule, the minimally effective dose, and how to learn a new language and do all these different things, but then also teaches you how to be a Michelin star chef using a Ziploc bag and a sink at a hotel to cook salmon or eggs and stuff. And you're like,
right.
What? But it's just one of those things where, when you listen to that and listen to the 4-hour work week and things of that nature, it gives you the idea of, how do I become the most efficient me? I still have no idea, but I think I'm slowly learning on how to do as much as I can with the minimal amount of draining myself, because I think that was one of the biggest things I used to run into was burnout, because you're doing so many things, and you got to keep your noggin straight and your mental health in good shape so you can continue to grow and help and scale and help folks.
Dude, so Jason, I was so excited in getting into your book list and all of that. I forgot to that some of our listeners they probably heard who you are, but they may not, and they may have just read about your quick bio on the Cisco website or whatnot. But
Sure.
before we get into all of that, and I still want to pick your brain about all the books and the mindsets. But before we get into that, can you tell us just a little bit about who you are, what you do at Cisco, and kind of your path toward network engineering? And I assure you, it's a very interesting one. And it's I was so excited to hear about your story at the rental place and all that. But what point this to that episode, right? It's Art of Network Engineering. I was part of that recording. But here we'll just do like a little overview of who you are, what you do, and all that.
Perfect. Yeah, I guess I'll start by saying now you know that I have children. So I'm a father.
Yes.
I'm a father and a husband, which is an amazing thing. I mean, I was just looking at a picture that showed up on Time Hop on Facebook today of our wedding photo from 12 years ago now. And I'm just like, 12 years ago? I mean, not much has changed. I mean, I had a little bit more up here, but
me too.
But yeah, right. And I guess I could blame it on the kids that's gone, but it's probably not it. It's either genetics or the fact that I went for these things back here that took most of my life. But no, the thing is, so I'm a technical evangelist at Cisco, which really what that means is I am fortunate and blessed to talk to customers all over the world about the different technologies that we use, as well as I build training content and curriculum for not only our field, but our partners to enable them on our technology.
Mm-hmm.
So I get to see all kinds of really cool stuff and what's coming out and talk to customers about how it fits in their environment and how we can help better align the technology to their use cases. So that's my day job. In addition to that, as you know, I'm a Cisco Press author. As you mentioned, I focus a lot on trying to give back to the community. So through books and my blog, there's one, and shouts out back to you for sending me this one. I cannot wait to read this. I need to up my Python game, and this is definitely going to be one of the ways that I do that. And the other thing is I'm doing classes with Pearson and O'Reilly now. So I'm doing the ENRC class, and it looks like I'm picking up the EN core class as well. And I have also been putting in and teaching MPLS. So there's an MPLS class coming out for that as well. So that'll be a couple things I'm working on, just kind of outside of my day job. And then other than that, we talk about giving back quite a bit. I'm going to plug this because hopefully everybody will see this before the 18th of November.
Absolutely.
So I'm doing something called the annual Sleepout through Covenant House, and what that is a program through Covenant House, which is a giant company that is dedicated to help homeless youth. and I'm sleeping out. And a lot of the folks at Cisco do this every year. And this is probably, I think, my 4th or 5th year involved somehow. If we couldn't sleep out, we donate or we do whatever we can. So we're actually sleeping outside. And it's pretty cold now out here by me in Chicagoland area. So it's pretty cold. But you sleep outside, and the idea is to raise awareness for homeless youth. And while they get to sleep inside in the Covenant House, we sleep outside and send this link out to try to raise funds and awareness for homeless youth. And everything we do through Cisco gets matched 100%, up to $25,000 per person for Cisco, which is really cool. So I'm doing that November 18th. You can check that out on my Twitter and LinkedIn and things, Facebook and things of that nature. So I really encourage you, if you can, even if it's $1 automatically becomes $2 just because somebody gives it to this fund. So anything you can do will help. And I encourage anybody out there, if they want to join me, if they're bored, I can tell you where we'll be, and you can come out here west of Chicago. We can all hang out and have a little bonfire. But it's for a good cause, and I think that's the biggest thing, is trying to find ways that we can give back that have the most impact. And I mentioned being efficient. I'm trying to figure out ways I can be efficient in helping people as much as I possibly can as well. And trying to do it not to my detriment either, right? Like, it used to be like, I'm so tired because I was teaching class, or I was doing something for work, and then I stayed up for the maintenance window, or I donated some time here, and I'm just drained. I'm finding ways to get the most impact. And I don't consider myself to have a brand or anything like that. I am just me. But I do whatever I can to leverage anybody who will listen to help other folks. So if it's through a book giveaway, if it's through sleeping out for homelessness, or coaching or mentoring, whatever it is, that's my jam.
That's cool, Jason. I mean, so this episode will not probably air in time, but we'll definitely put a link out before that time. Right after this recording, we'll put a link out. We'll advertise on social, and people could also follow you on Twitter, and we'll put link out in the show notes as well. So you will continue to do these kind of activities that you continue to encourage people to do. So I imagine.
Absolutely. And if anybody wants to join, I'll have all the info on how to do all these different things moving forward, because it's super cool. It really is.
Awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of interesting. You mentioned how to do things in the most impactful and most efficient way, right? Because I mean, I try to do the right thing. And when, I mean, it's not a plug for my book, but so when the first 2 edition of the book came out, all of the proceeds went to nonprofits, right? And I start tracking all the nonprofits that I donated to, as well as I'll ask people like such as yourself, my guests, and say which nonprofit that you feel the most passionate about, and I'll make donation to them as well. But it doesn't feel enough, right? Like, it feels like just giving out money is not enough, and it feels like there's so much more we could do, but each of us only have so much time. If I spend all the time, doing nonprofit, is that the most impactful way I could do? Because, I could be earning money and then donating to nonprofit, right? So I don't have an answer, but it seems like you have put in a lot of thoughts into that topic.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm even considering starting my own nonprofit, and I don't know what it all would entail, because, and this is kind of a unique situation, which I'm really excited about. I'm fortunate that I can do like a whole bunch of random different things, right? I mean, I can help teach you karate. I can help, work on networks. We can build woodworking and do birdhouses. I can do all these different things. Any way I can take all these things and put them together and make something to help someone, I think, is what I wanted to do. And so the nonprofit, I know when you're going to file for one of these things, you have to have a charter in mind. And it's just like, I want to help people, as much as I want it to be so easy. You have to draw a line in the sand as how you're going to help folks. And even though, like for example, my wife is a preschool teacher, and she is also on the board for another preschool where I'm going, a different school before they became, because the one school wouldn't do preschool. It was only kindergarten through high school. So we had to put him in preschool in a different town. And my wife grew up in that town. So she ended up as on the board. Then she was the vice president. Now she's the president of the whole preschool board. And it's all donation based only for the
Oh,
tuition.
wow.
There's no, that's it. And the teachers don't make pretty much anything. I mean,
Right.
really.
Right.
And like I want to do stuff to help back, give back to them. And I'm running different stands at some of their fundraiser events and things like that. But thinking through how do you do that, like that's helping one school, which is a very important school in this town, and it helps the kids and everything. But how do you take that and make it mass? I mean, how
Right.
can I make it where if I'll give you a book, if this book is $100 book or $70 book or whatever it might be, and I give you a book, to maybe entice you to donate, $5 or $10 or something, or tweet a link out or send it out to just try to raise awareness that these are some of the things and projects that we're working on.
Right.
I think that's the value of using social to try to amplify these good causes. You hear of, I mean, for crying out loud, I hate to say this, it sounds crazy, but the dude with the twisted tea can, it took the internet by storm because he did his thing with this twisted tea can, and
Right.
there are GoFundMe's for this guy to really help the guy out, and I see that being important. But when it comes to like feeding kids or homeless kids or kids who can't even go to school because they can't afford it, and kids who want to do music instruments and lessons who can't afford them, and that's some of these nonprofits like the Old Bridge Militia that I'm partnered with, is like those to me are near and dear to my heart. And not to say that twisted scenario wasn't important. It definitely was. But
Right.
how do we use those tools to get the visibility to scale? So some little town next door here that only has a population of 2,000 people can get the visibility at the same as Chicago would, to
Right.
try to do that. So I think there's some more noodling I have to do. I know that tech bookshelf thing, that one of the things I was working with Eloise Coolpiss on is building this tech bookshelf so we can give away books and collect books and ship them to folks who can't afford them for learning resources. And then we're looking at also trying to see if we can find a way to do that with equipment for labs or licensing through software and expand it out for the whole learning community. But there's a lot of red tape there, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Um, can't just send gray market equipment out, and there's a lot of legalities to it, but it's all for the greater good. And I think having that platform to at least raise up the different issues that are happening in your backyard, so other folks who may want to lend a helping hand, even if it's not financially, they might come out and help. For example, like there's a fire door that needs to be installed into this building, and it's a church. So there's a church, and then in the basement of the church is this preschool, and it's this double metal door. But it needs to be a double metal door, I should say. It's a double wood door right now.
Right.
Uh, so they're like, it's got to be this fire rated double metal special door and all this. They want
Right.
$9,000 to
Wow.
do that,
Wow.
and that's pretty much the salary of the teacher,
Right.
to put it into perspective, to
Right.
do a door. And
Right.
I'm like, oh my gosh, how do we got to find a way to be better at this? I mean,
Yeah.
how do we do this? So there might be somebody out there who knows how to do that, or might just be like, what? It's strange you say that, because I've got two of those doors in my garage. And I'm like, what? It's just the most random things, but those things pay off. Those long shots pay off. So it doesn't hurt to talk about it, I guess is my point.
Right. For sure. For sure. So, I mean, like you said, right? Like just because you have good intention doesn't translate automatically to good results. I mean, case in point
Exactly.
would be one laptop per child, right? I remember
Yeah, yeah.
looking at that, and I remember buying a few laptops, but execution wise, it's I mean, there are many good articles written about why did the movement stop, or why was it not as successful as it could be. But the bottom line is there's certainly red tapes they have to go through, and
Mm.
execution is just as important as good intention. So
Right.
I don't have an answer to that, but it's so interesting that you brought up, just exposure and just putting yourself out there, putting that intention out there, and attract like-minded people. It's like The Secret, right? The book. It's another book that we could
Yeah.
talk about. It's like The Secret. You put your intention out there, and now you're becoming more aware and attract like-minded people to your tribe. Um, I mean, obviously, I haven't done as much in this area as you have, but I'd be interested in, kind of tying that back into your book recommendation of, for example, putting your intention out there. How do you stay positive through all these adversities, so to speak, or how do you
Yeah.
stay still motivated, through maybe, nobody has that metal door, right? Like, what do you do then?
Yeah. And it's so funny. It's like, and I think that, like when you mentioned bringing other folks together and
Right.
involving them in the issues at hand, I think if we can figure out how to do this think tank style, we have a lot of folks in this industry who are brilliant, and they all know somebody else who knows 10 other people who may also be brilliant in their own perspective, right. So if you're talking about this and we can maybe make a community where we can say, hey, look, I mean, that might be it. It might be like Metal DevOps might be donating money to figure out how to, you know, put in a steel door so the kids can stay safe in case of a fire.
Right.
I mean, there's so many things out there that I think you can do. And I think to your point, when you're listening to books and trying to stay positive, because I mean, let's be real here. A lot of times there's no, right? The answer is no on a lot of things. For all the things that do work, there are a lot of things that do not come through and that do not work and aren't approved, or it gets swept away, and it's an idea that just dies on the vine. And I think the more at bats you have and the more you talk about certain things, the more certain things will stick to the wall and then come to fruition. And I think that that's true of pretty much anything. I mean, think about how inventors do it. They don't just stop after one. I think it was called Heinz 57 because it was like the 57th recipe or something like that, or WD-40. WD-40, I think, was also the 40th recipe of how they made WD-40. And that was literally what it was, water dispellant 40 or something like that. So
Right.
when I think of these things, that gives me hope. And I'm a naturally positive kind of vibey kind of person who likes helping as much as I can, like in any way, right? I'm the kind of guy that will like, all right, you can't stop and help fix everybody's tire because you'll never get to work, or
Right.
they might steal your car, or some random stuff like that you hear all the time. But I'm the one who always wants to help in any way I can if I have the ability to. To me, it just seems like you should and have to help, and I think that's just the way I was raised.
Hmm.
And when you look back at all the times you needed somebody to lift you up or give you a hand, I'm pretty sure that there's quite a few, and you can't remember every single one of them. So I just stopped trying, and I just say, look, as long as I'm good and doing the best I can to help folks and make their dreams come true and make everybody happy and get home safe at the end of the day, whatever it may be, then I'm better for it that day and that night and on to the next day. So it sounds corny, but I grew up with nothing. I mean, I literally had absolutely nothing. We were evicted constantly. We had no money. We grew up in some of the worst conditions outside of Chicago.
Hmm.
We were involved in things that we probably shouldn't have been in as kids, hotshot teenagers and stuff like that.
Right.
And you think about all these things and where we're at today, and everything has changed, but at the same time, it's just everything is now more, you're on 24 hours a day, no
Yeah.
matter whether you want to be or not.
Right.
And I think instead of trying to fake it, which would be exhausting,
Hmm.
just be you and do whatever you can. And if you could do something to help, maybe it wouldn't hurt. And what goes around comes around.
Yeah, definitely. So I remember, so I think it goes back to the execution again, right? Like it goes back into everybody has good intention, but good intention doesn't work. In fact, this is actually one of my first impression of Jeff Bezos. When I was employee at Amazon, and the first all hands, I was very excited. I was just there looking forward to sitting at the edge of my seat. And I remember Amazon was back then was small enough to fit into the Fifth Avenue Theater. And I look at my seat, and when Mr. Bezos came up, and the first thing he said was, "Good intention doesn't work." Um, so that kind of piques the curiosity of everybody in the audience, and
Right.
so then the question is, what works, right? So what he said was, systems work. A execution plan works. So when you get paged at 3 a.m. in the morning, your intention is to fix something, right? Whatever was broke, but you're tired. You can't think straight, so you're bound to take
Right.
some shortcuts, and you don't have all the information with you if you don't have a plan. So it's really come down to planning and think ahead of time, like you said, right? You explore all the options. Some of them don't pan out, but some of them would. So what are some of the things that you think about when I say execution? What are some of the books? What are some of the concepts that helped you in your execution of these either nonprofits or studying for CCIE or just trying to achieve your goals, basically?
It's so funny you say that. So I'm going to open my Audible app so I can actually read some of these so I don't totally botch the titles. But one of the things, there was a book that I read, and it's buried in my closet, and I don't have it right now. Like you mentioned, like for studying, even for certifications, there was a book that somebody wrote, and it was a non-technical guide to your CCIE. What you have to do, what you have to know about studying for your CCIE, non-technical. It was like a personal guide to dealing with family. I think the gentleman's name was Vivek. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty confident that's what it was. Stuff like that to help you prepare your own mindset and things of that nature. And when you start talking about books, like this one, I just learned about this book today. I'm not even kidding you, just downloaded this book today. Haven't even read it. It's called The Fifth Discipline.
Okay.
And I've never even heard of it. And the idea, I just hit play, so hopefully it doesn't play in here. It's literally about deconstructing systems and how systems work and how you can make execution plans and reconstruct. And I just found it so fascinating because I'm building education and training. And actually, my manager, Tyler, was the one who referred it to me. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. So I'm going to listen to that. So that was one. And then there's another one that actually is a really good one that I've been reading. It's the 5 Levels of Leadership.
Okay.
By John Maxwell. If you haven't seen that one, it's another really good one. And for the folks out there who are going to laugh at me, I don't care. I have to put this one out there. There was one out there called The Perfect Day to Boss Up.
Okay. I haven't heard of that one.
I was in an airport in Arkansas coming back. I was out with some friends in Megadeth. It was kind of a funny thing. And I was out there in Arkansas in the middle of this little airport. And there was this bookstore, like a little Hudson News kind of thing. And I walked in, and there was this book, and it's a guy named Rick Ross, who's a rapper.
Okay.
And he was on there, and he's on the cover, and it says The Perfect Day to Boss Up. And I'm like, oh, let me look at that. I listened to this guy's music. I'm like, all right, yeah. So I'm reading it, and I'm like, and it looked like a really good motivational book about being an entrepreneur. So I'm like, I like that book. I'm not going to buy it here because it's in paper copy, and I don't have time for that.
Right.
But I will download it on Audible right now. So I downloaded that, and it was a really good book. There is a little bit of cursing in it, which I'm fully used to.
Right.
You may not be, so maybe there's
growing up in the tough neighborhood of Chicago. I'm sure you heard it all.
You should have seen my dad. He was from Chicago in the Navy. Yeah, he's the other one I think is probably I'm not gonna lie to you, the best book that I read it and listened to it. About execution was called Atomic Habits.
Yes.
You haven't heard of Atomic Habits? I love that book. And even down to something that you would think has nothing to do with anything. Right. I ripped apart this entire office. You can't see it there was stuff everywhere. I had all these different desks and things, and it was like you could barely even walk through here because of the different computers and video endpoints and Raspberry Pi this and switches and stuff everywhere, right? Right. I listened to this book, and it was talking about you got to be your own environmental designer.
Right.
And I thought about that. I'm like, what? And it's basically saying if you walk into a room and you don't feel calm, like you're meditating or relaxed, there's something in that room that is causing you to feel amped up, pressure, anxiety, stress, whatever it may be. For me, I noticed that every time I come in this room, or I did anyway, there was all these unfinished projects everywhere. I mean, from the Raspberry Pi, we'll probably jokingly get into this too. Like I tried to build this Retro Pi like 8 times, man. I got the system on there. I can't get not one single game to work on that thing. I've tried everything. I've read everything. I don't know if there's a fault. I don't know what it is. And I'm over here like, man. And I look at that, and there's all this stuff, and then like that's not done. And I had 2 desks at the time, and they gave them to me from an old Cisco office. So they were like real nice desks made of this kind of stuff, right? These are from Cisco, and but they took up the whole office. And then because I had 2 desks, I had 2 full desks, right, of just stuff, and it was just stressing me out. I literally, while listening to this book, ripped every single thing out of this entire room, and I am not kidding.
Oh wow!
Everything. And I got pictures somewhere. And my buddy did this thing on his wall where he puts all this like reclaimed wood up on the wall, and it just looks so beautiful, And I'm like, that's so relaxing to just look at that, And I'm like, I'm doing that. So I did. He gave me all this wood. He came over and helped me, and we put all this reclaimed wood on this wall. And then I hung up a 55-inch Teams board, WebEx Teams board, and it just looks so clean. I'm like, it's just like, ooh, that looks good, And I ripped everything else out of here, and there's really nothing other than this box right here that I got to ship out, and an AP that I have to reprogram. But that's basically it. And then I bought a standing reclaimed wood desk, the raisable lower desk. If you haven't checked out VariDesk, check out vari.com, VARI.com. I'm going to plug them. I don't even care. This stuff is awesome. And I bought a standing desk from them, and a little filing cabinet that is a seat, and all this cool stuff. It's amazing stuff. Amazing stuff.
Yeah.
But it looks great. And it's just so, you walk in and you're just like, oh man. And now it's so crazy. This office, even though I spend 90% of my time in this room, is the room that I go to when I need to chill out.
Yeah.
So when you talk about execution, just a mindset change.
Yeah.
Of taking stock of what's going on can just totally change your entire life. Ever since I did that, I've been going. My wife's ready to kill me because figuratively speaking, because I have to walk around, and I'm like walking in the room like, we don't need that. That needs to go. Clean the closet out, ripping stuff apart. Like, what is that? That just rip it all out, because and that's the thing. And it's kind of like life. And this is something that somebody told me once. Once you deconstruct what's going on, you will never be able to put it back the same way it was.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're having problems with something and you deconstruct it, that could be a good thing. I haven't seen that be a bad thing yet, to be honest with you. I've deconstructed some pretty rancid, crazy things in my time of issues happening, my father's health, or all these different things, and trying to struggle with why is this happening, or why is this happening to me? And sometimes you just need to take a step back to refocus and then look at it from a different perspective. And I think the more I listen to these books, the more I do these interviews and I talk to folks and listen to their perspectives on things, it totally changes my everything. And Atomic Habits, if you haven't, you have to. You owe it to yourself to listen to this book. It's I don't even, it's like 4 hours on Audible.
Audible.
Just go through it. It's great. James Clear is the gentleman who does it.
Yeah. I will concur 100%. I do have Atomic Habits on audiobook as well, and I have it in print, and I have it on ebook, and I also have it in Chinese translation, because one time I went back to Taiwan, and bam, there it is. It was like top 10 selling. I'm like, okay, so maybe there's something in Chinese that I could grab on and talk to my family about. So I actually have it in multiple languages. And get this, when I, like you, when I was reading that book, I actually moved the pull-up bar from the garage to my desk so I could do more pull-ups, right? Like I practice every day, like what he was preaching about, incremental change, measuring your progress, and all of that.
You have to measure.
Yeah.
If you don't measure, you don't even know what you're working towards. And like, it's so funny. Right on the same vein of this, and how I got into this. Have you ever heard of Ryan Holiday?
No, not yet.
I don't. So there's a book.
Now I do.
Ego is the Enemy.
Okay.
And that was what I was just doing, was unlocking my phone so I could read these names. I wasn't zoning out.
Nice.
Ego is the Enemy is one that I absolutely truly love, and another one called The Obstacle is the Way. He has a bunch of books, but the only way I heard about him, was Tim Ferriss was talking about him on one of his podcasts.
Yeah.
So
was it the Titans book, like the habits?
That's another one. Yeah. So I got that one too. That one's called The Tribe of Mentors, and then there's another one called where was it? Yeah, it was like Habits of the Titans or something like that.
Right.
Exactly. Tools of Titans. Tools of Titans. So I have that in my thing, but I have not read that yet. Tools of Titans. And
because that book is like 700 pages.
It's like a 17-hour ebook, I think it was. Tribe of Mentors is 18.
Oh wow.
They're really long. But you don't look at it. You just, every time you're driving somewhere, it's like there's 30 minutes gone, there's 50 minutes gone. It just goes by so fast when you listen to audiobooks. And for me, I think I can retain it a lot better because I've always been, and that was my struggle. Laugh at me now, right here. this guy who can't stand reading is writing books. It's like, what are you doing? You know what I mean?
Right.
But I couldn't stand reading. I still am. I'm a slow reader. For some reason, that's just not my preferred method of listening and seeing and doing. That's it for me. And then that, from all the video instruction that we do and all the different students we have out there, obviously it's an important method of learning for a lot of folks. And when I realized that was my jam, I was talking about how I was forced to read books in junior high and high school. And I'm like, books that I would like, I'm not saying that they're not bad books, like Where the Red Fern Grows and things of that nature, right? But it's just, they didn't interest me, and none of these things, like, it's like, here, guess what? You're going to read a 900-page book on how to sew fabric together and make a quilt.
Right.
If I'm not a quilting type person, that's going to be a very difficult read for me. It's like, if I'm not traveling, reading a road atlas, which, if you're not familiar with that is, it's a book of maps. Because sometimes I haven't seen one of those in a long time. But it would be like dry reading, and I cannot. You can throw it at my forehead 50 times, I will not absorb it. And I think between that and some of these books and how we listen and absorb information nowadays, we didn't have this.
Right.
I wish we had this 20 years ago. I mean, oh my gosh, if we had this 20 years ago, I mean, can you imagine what the world would look like today? If we had video conferencing like this and all of these learning and automation and things, it'd be a totally different ballgame.
I would constantly tell my children. I mean, it's one of those bits where, you tell, hey, when I was your age, I walked, 10 miles in the snow to school, right? Which is not true. I grew up in Southern California, but
barefoot, uphill both ways, right?
For sure, right? And I was carrying 100-pound books, but yeah, you're right. So today there are different medium, YouTube videos, podcasts. The resources just out there. It's just amazing. As far as just multiple ways to learn. So I think you mentioned a very interesting point. Is obviously the format doesn't really matter. It's the knowledge that is crucial, and everybody learns a little differently. That's actually one of my pet peeves is just to learn how people learn. Learning how to learn is actually a skill by itself, and it's always very interesting to me, even more so now that I have kids, right? So I imagine your daughter would be, "Hey, Daddy, who's Tim Ferriss? Why do I always constantly hear about him during our commute?"
I mean, she constantly asks me about because like we'll be driving to karate or something, and it's like an hour drive each way, and I'll put on something. I've been listening to the 5 Levels and the 7 Habits and those lately. So she's just like, what's he talking about? So then I would like pause it and I'll explain some scenario that she's going through and try to put it into perspective for her. And it most of the time she goes, oh, okay, that makes sense. And it resonates. But the funny thing is, it's like, when you said it's a skill to learn how others learn,
right?
That is so accurate. And I don't even consider myself an educator, but I guess I am in a way. But when you think about that, coming from my wife being an actual teacher,
right? She's an educator, but you're an educator too, man.
I'm an edutainer, I guess, right?
I like that.
It's one of those things where you're like, if you really know what makes someone tick, you can tweak your approach,
right?
And I mean, if somebody who wants to share information, this is the other thing I think is so cool about that, right? You could take up all of your experiences, all of my experiences, all of this person's experiences, all of that knowledge that they have. You will never, even if you have, you just will never be able to get it out, either in paper, video, or you'll never get it out exactly the way you have it inside. It's just not possible, right? I mean, you can, not all of it anyway. I mean, maybe a condensed version of some things, but everybody has their own unique experiences, and how you learned and how you teach. You have to draw from these resources, but you have to do it in a mindset of, how can this person, ingest what it is I'm telling them. And what's cool about that is because we've gone through it, you've gone through it, other educators have gone through it. They know that based on doing that, the little section here is the most important for me to show you. Just explain it and show it to you live, pow. And by doing that, you cut out all of the trial and error that you went through, right? It was valuable for you because you needed to go through that from an experience perspective.
Right.
But if you can take out all the trial and error for somebody getting new experience with programmability, automation, whatever the topic is, automation, what have you, and you could just take out all the daunting pieces that scare folks away and
Yeah.
just be like, do this, try it this way, and you can see positive reactions and results from that. Why would you not want to just, oh, it's almost like, I don't want to say Cliff Notes version, right? But it's a concentrated version of what you went through. So
Right.
you can help them learn as fast and most efficiently as possible without wasting their time and making them feel bad and dumb at the same time, right? I mean, I went through so many things, smashing my head against a wall trying to figure out why frame relay isn't working, to find out, I'm doing all these things, and in reality was the frame relay switch I was using that I had no control over was actually incorrectly configured.
Right. The
Right.
encapsulation
So
is wrong on the other end.
on the other end, or the Delphi mapping is wrong, right? You're going through all this
Exactly.
stuff, right? And you're beating your head against, like, why is it doesn't work? And you're blaming yourself. So that's hitting your confidence,
Yeah.
confidence.
Right.
Where if I can say instead of that, wouldn't have
Yeah.
been awesome if I said, all you would have had to do is this debug, and you would have been able to see the frame relay Delphi's coming in off from the service provider switch or the frame relay switch, and you'd be like, oh, so those are not matching the documentation.
Right.
You could have been like 5 minutes, and then you can continue on your path of learning. Now, I'm not saying take away every negative experience and having the bumps and bruises of going through it and doing that. I'm
Right.
saying there's a niche there. There's a space, especially, and this is one of the things that I focus on when I'm trying to do these books and all this other stuff is
Yeah.
getting folks started.
Yep.
Once you get started, you can do whatever you want.
Right.
But if you have turmoil getting started, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Not get started. That's
Right.
exactly what you're going to do. That's what
Right.
everybody does. If I can ease you into getting started and say, look, here's something you did, and here's the outcome. You real quickly built this thing, or you did something in Cisco DNA Center, and you automated, so whatever it may be, whatever it is you're doing, and I can get you to that outcome to show you that it is attainable.
Yeah.
Then you go through the bumps and bruises, and at least there's an outcome that you're going to be able to get to that will be a positive one, right? And I think
Right.
that was one of the things that I struggled with for all those years studying, was that, and probably why it took me so long to get the CCIE and some of the stuff, was that back then there weren't a lot of books like we have now. There weren't a lot of these online resources, and you
Yeah.
just had to trust that the provider you're going through that would give you this information would be accurate. You can't
Right.
trust anybody. You have to trust yourself. And I think if you can get armed with the skill set to be able to get right to the root cause, right to the answer, and
Right.
I think that would help you with tools on how to find the correct answer, which is very beneficial for moving forward. But also, it makes you excited to want to keep learning, and that's all
Yep.
it is, right? I mean, life is school. Life is all school. That's it. Life
Mhm.
is learning until you're not here anymore, and then you'll do whatever you're going to do and probably still be learning, right?
Right.
It's a forever learning cycle. I don't like it that it has to be painful all the time, right?
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be so abrasive. And I've been to classes, I've taken classes, I've seen classes delivered, I've read books, I've done so many things in this space. When you see some of these things being delivered, you're like, you watch the light extinguish in somebody's eyes. You're like, that person's never coming back. I
Yeah.
mean, and like, so why don't we just say, hey, let's take an extra 5, or if not, sidebar, I'm going to help you out. We're going to get you until that moment of clarity, until that click, until those light bulbs kick on. And I think the more, and that's my journey. That's what I do. I mean, when folks reach out to me on LinkedIn, Twitter, all these things, I'm like,
Mhm.
they ask me these questions, and I try to legitimately help them the best I can.
Right.
Um, if it's something like, hey, how do I get a job at Cisco? Cisco.com/go/careers.
Very
Uh, you
straightforward.
know, apply. I can't
Yeah.
apply for you.
Right.
But it's just one of those things that I think that if you can help ease that process,
Yeah.
and it's in numbers. I don't think that I'm by any means like you gave me a Python book, okay? I don't consider myself a Python wizard. in any way, shape, or form. I'm very much looking forward to reading this book. You know what I mean? And then you're always learning, and it takes. I talk about this all the time, and I know you've heard it, and we've talked about this, right? Community.
Yep.
It takes a community. You can be the stubborn person to do it all on your own, and yes, you will still be hopefully potentially successful whether you do it on your own or not. But why suffer? Why not share the knowledge, and why not have a support group to help you where you realize that, oops, I screwed up that code myself as well. And somebody out there, I'm sure there's gonna be a million hits on this thing telling me why I couldn't get that RetroPie working, right? But whatever it may be, but that's the thing. In the end, I want it working, right? Like, if somebody would say, like, have you tried this, this, and this? And I'm like, no, and I try it and it works, I'm gonna be happy that somebody told me how to get that working. Why? Because I want to play games with my daughter. I want to build something and play games with my kids and have something we can do together. So the outcome, the ends don't have, necessarily always have to justify the means, but you really want to make sure it aligns with the outcome you're trying to get to. And I don't know anybody who says, hey man, I want you to just make this the most drab, boring, paperwork driven, lecture intensive class. Nobody I've ever heard.
I mean, so I think there's a lot to unpack from what you just said there, and I think James Clear touched on this as well in his book, was about decision fatigue, right? So when you talk about a beginner, whether they're new to automation, whether new to any other subject, CCIE, for example, the beginning is always very difficult because you have to learn A, B, C, and D. You heard about Git, you heard about CI/CD, you heard about Python, you heard about programmability, API, you name it. And there's all these other things, but each of us only have a certain amount of attention before we get really tired. Anybody have also? We have like this. I would call failure budget, right? We could only fail so much before we just lie on our bed and just give up. Yeah, so like, so we have a certain failure budget. So we get the fatigue about decisions, we get fatigue about failures. So what you mentioned there was absolutely accurate, is we want to shortcut people and we want to say, hey, we tried that and it didn't work for us. So if you were just humorous and try this thing that worked, that will give you that first win, and therefore you'll pick up a positive cycle and say small wins, motivation, try more things, even bigger win, and then that just kicks off that cycle. And that's kind of what I heard from you, Jason. It's just this fatigue of, and then your failure budget, you want to shorten that, you want to leave that failure budget for something that later on. You don't want to just get tripped up right out of the door.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, it's perspective, right? So it's all about what you focus on. And for example, when you're learning a new thing, and I still, like, again, I say this in every interview I've ever been at, I still don't consider myself an expert in all these things, but I have the ability to help other folks, and I'm going to use it, right, to do that for them. But at the same time, if you focus on what you don't know when you're starting, you are doomed. Right? Like if you go into like, I'm going to go get my CCIE. I have never done anything before with Cisco networking. And then you look at all the vast stuff that's covered under CCIE, you're looking at all the things you don't know. And you immediately just put this rain cloud over your head and this huge daunting thing, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. It needs to be like, hey, check this out. I figured out how to build a Raspberry Pi in the first place. That alone was a win. You know what I mean? Oh, hey, at least I got the power on. It's on. Oh, boot it up. I used Belina Etcher to actually etch. Like, oh, it worked. Okay. Oh, dude, I'm moving in that direction. RetroPie's on there. I just can't get the games to work. Okay, whatever it may be, right? I think that's the thing, is it's perception and focus. If you can focus on what you're going to learn, or look at it like what you get to learn, or what you did just learn, one chapter at a time. Even if you go through, like, I'm going to go through this book and I'm going to do it one chapter at a time. I'm going to take notes like I always do with anything else. And you go back and like, wow, because what you do by doing that, you're by focusing on what you did learn. You can have spiral bound notebooks and all these different things. I learned all that. I can do that. I literally went through all the time to go through and learn that. So when that next person is coming in saying, I was thinking about learning Python. instead of saying, ha, 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 you know, here's this huge book, you know, they're
Right.
like, oh, dude, check it out. I did too. Did you know you could just start here with this little sliver of thing and then boom, boom, boom. Next thing you know, hello world.
Right. Right.
Why hello world exists, right?
Right. Yeah. So I mean, that's I think I try a lot of different packages as well, right? Like get different projects, different open source packages. And I think what kept me going for the libraries that I do keep going with and versus something that I just say, oh, you know, this look interesting and I abandon is the projects or the libraries that focus on the first 5 minutes of experience, the first onboarding experience. You know, you could tell just by
Yep.
documentation or by you know, the syntaxes that the creators, some of these creators have actually thought about the onboarding experience. Somebody who have thought about the first 5 minutes of somebody launching the library until they get that first small win. For those
Yep.
projects that put a lot of thoughts into that, those are the ones that really gains a lot of momentum. And you know, Python being one of them. I mean, I'm biased, but Python being one of
Sure.
them, Wagtail, Django, all of these experiences, Flask. You know, you could launch a web server with 8 lines of code. That's literally the tutorial. 8 lines of code, and you have a web server. So, from what I've heard from you, Jason, is you know, focus on your small wins, focus on what you could learn, and get that first 5 minutes out of the way so that you could, you know, progress further.
Yeah, exactly. And then even adding to that, focus, see if you can take what you're learning and map it to something that you truly want to do, right?
Precisely.
And that's
Yeah.
why everybody keeps talking about Raspberry Pis. It's a low-hanging fruit, fun thing. It's $100. I mean, you can get them for way cheaper than that, but they're like $100
Yeah,
for
for
like all this
sure.
other cool stuff. Like
Yeah,
this one has
Raspberry
like,
Pi
you know,
4 is $100, but
yeah,
$35 for, you know, AB and
maybe
you know,
yeah, you know,
yeah.
for a 3B or whatever, you know, and it's like you can do so many things with it. Like I want to just get to the point where I can just have it turn off a switch of something, a physical switch. And you know,
Nice.
and if I can get it to do certain things like that, I can just randomly, because I'm bored, instead of using my queue or something, I can
Yeah.
open and close a garage door. I can turn off and on a USB or an LED light. You can do whatever physically you want to do. You can trip an alarm. You can literally do a lot of things. And the reason I want to do that, and this is a funny thing that I'm trying to do, is I have a Honeywell device called a Lyric, and they are these little devices that are wireless,
Yeah.
and they are water sensors. If they
Oh,
detect
okay.
water, either on there's two metal contacts in the bottom. If it detects water, it'll alert. Or you can
Yeah.
plug in this line that you can run, I think, up to like 30 something feet, and if it's just two wires in there, if they get wet, they short out. If that line shorts out anywhere, it will trip and send emails and beep and text messages and all this other stuff.
Nice.
Well, it's supposed to anyway. It's supposed to work. Most
Yeah.
of the time, sadly, sorry on that one, Honeywell. It just hasn't been working. They've just been failing. There's been a lot of issues with it. But if I can have a Raspberry Pi that says
Yeah.
if you trip these two things, it will do whatever I want, I can have that
Yep.
Raspberry Pi up off the ground so it will never get wet and destroyed. It'll just
Right.
trip out those two things, right? Those two
Yep.
contacts, and
Yeah.
then a fully functional wireless or wired Raspberry Pi, I can have it sing and dance and do everything I want.
Yeah.
Custom alerts, SMTP server, like you can do anything you want with it.
Yeah.
Then some, right? I can have lights go. I can do a million different things. Hey, warning, this is flashing red. This
Right.
light is flashing red in my kitchen for some reason now. It could be just a hue light bulb that's flashing red. There's a problem. There's a
Yeah.
problem. I need to go look, you know. So it's just find something that you can use it for, a use case that you'll like and enjoy, and then
Yeah.
try to find little ways to make that happen, because you'll be surprised. You're like, not only am I learning, I'm getting value out of this day one
Right.
because I'm working towards something that is useful and beneficial to me.
Yeah, so make it relevant, right? Make it
Relevant.
relevant to
Yeah.
you. Make it. I think no, I didn't invent that. I think that's part of James Clear's book as well. Just make your goal relevant,
Yep.
and that would, you know, automatically motivate you and so on and so forth. I mean, something that I kind of picked up in our conversation, but I wasn't sure if that's what you meant as well, was um, focus on the process, right? So I think that's something that uh, you know, that's in the book Atomic Habit as well. Is you want to focus on the process rather than you want to have goals, but you don't want to make the goals for an end all be all. You want to focus on the process so that you can make incremental gains. You focus on, I don't know, putting on the shoes. That's what the example he gave. Instead of running 10 miles, you want to focus on putting on the shoes. You want to make a ritual of, maybe just putting out the running clothes right next to your bed, so that you make it easy. You focus on the process, and then you make incremental gains, and before you know it, you reach your first goal, make that win, and then you reach your second goal, and so on and so forth. So I think that's something that I picked up in our conversation. You didn't say that specifically, but
that's a great analogy, because what you're saying is 100% accurate. Like I mean, for example, that's kind of like the 100 Days to Code and all these other things, right? It's like if I get up and I put my shoes on, because I want to work towards going to the gym to work out,
right?
And then I take my shoes off and I go on with my day. I don't even leave the house,
right?
And then the next day I put my shoes on. I keep doing that. Then I put my shoes on, and then I put my workout clothes on, and then I switch back out. And eventually, he was even talking to the point James Clear was talking in this Atomic Habits book about driving all the way to the gym.
Stay for 5 minutes.
Stay for 5 minutes and turn around and go back home. Force yourself to go home after 5 minutes. Most folks would think that's asinine, but you keep doing that. And the reason being is if you go there the first day, you're like, I'm here, and you go crazy for 3 hours and work out, you're going to be so sore, you're never going to want to come back, right? But if you stay for 5 minutes, you're like, okay, I did my 5 minutes, I'm going home. And the next day, 5 or whatever, and you get to the point where then you're doing 15, then you're doing a half an hour. It doesn't take long, but now you have a ritual of getting up, putting your shoes on, putting your clothes on, going to the gym, working out at the gym for a period of time, and then going back home. And next thing you know, it's habit. It is habit. Atomic habits, right? That's the thing.
Atomic habits.
Same thing goes with whatever it may be: coding, learning, reading a chapter a day. I've been into this. What was the name of that? Have you ever heard of the Calm app? Calm, like for like a meditation. There's an app called Calm.
Yes.
CALM. And I've been using that for a long time, like meditating. I've been meditating a lot lately, and I'm telling you what, it is amazing. It's if you want to find a place to just be calm, relax, and just get away from everything. Sometimes you just got to shut your eyes and tune it all tremendously. But the reason I bring that up is in that app, there's a whole bunch of different like things where there's quotes, there's like relaxation videos of just like soothing water, or somebody like cutting up like kinetic sand, or just different things to move your attention to this and not on everything else that's driving you mad, right? And that's the whole idea, is that it's all perception, it's all focus. If you focus on, I have to read all these books, I have to go for the certification, and my deadline's this date, oh my gosh, it becomes a chore. Versus I live in a world where I get to wake up, talk about the coolest freaking technology. I get to help folks learn technology. I get to play with these things. And I get paid for it too? Like, wait, what? If you just switch instead of saying, oh, I got to work today, I get to work today. There's a lot of folks out there who don't get to work today, who don't have that ability, right? And it just changes perception. And I mentioned this before, and I mentioned it again. I've been doing a gratitude journal. I mean, I'm telling you, that has changed my life. Write down every day 3 things that are good, 3 things that you want to, expect to hope or want to happen today. 2 words of affirmation of what I am, whatever. I am happy, I am excited, or I'm strong, or I'm healthy, or whatever it may be. 3 things that went well today, and then 2 things that could have went better. I got that again from Tim Ferriss on one of his podcasts, talking about this book.
I think Tim should call us if he wants to sponsor our show.
I just need to email him. I emailed him one day, and I messaged him on Facebook, and he responded to me. And I was severely overweight. This was a few years back, before I had all the health things and the vegan stuff and all of that. I was just overweight, and I couldn't figure out what it was, right? And, with my parents being diabetic, mom passing from it, my dad's pretty close in the same boat. I don't want to go down that same path, right? So I messaged him because I read The 4-Hour Body and The 4-Hour Chef, and it talks about the 4-hour diet, like your slow carb diet. You're eating lean proteins and vegetables and cutting out all the starches and the fats and the sugars and all that. And I emailed him. I think I lost like 40 pounds or something.
Oh, wow.
And I messaged him on Facebook. I'm like, I'm so thankful, man. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it because it really helped me out a lot. And yada, yada. And he replied back to me and said, I've known folks who have lost over 200 pounds just doing that.
Wow.
Right? And he said, good luck, kind of keep it up type thing. And I'm like,
yeah.
Wow, Tim Ferriss responded to me.
Yay.
I'm like, that's crazy. Yay, but because he did, this might sound petty. I don't really mean to make it sound petty, but because he did respond to me, that encouraged me.
Sure.
To like, wow, he really does care.
Right.
So what did I do? Picked up the book.
Yeah.
Right. Listened to the rest of his podcast. Listen to all these different things. It's like, when you give back to someone and you acknowledge it doesn't take a second to acknowledge somebody. Right. And I love hearing people's journey. I love hearing about, if this didn't work out, why it didn't work out, maybe different things I can do to kind of help and encourage them. But I learn every single time I talk to somebody. Every time. Teaching classes, I ask what worked, what didn't work, what they want to change, and the feedback, or what could have been done better, or whatever. What topic wasn't covered, and you get all this information back, and you're like, wow, I didn't think of it that way. So I tweak you tune and tweak how you deliver to make it better for the next round.
Right.
And I think anytime you can do that in life, and you can just kind of get your own stock of what's going on as far as your journey, and I learned early on from a good friend of mine, Anthony Sequeira. I'm going to plug him. He's a good friend of mine. And he said, you have to be brutally honest with yourself. Okay. I mean, if you're writing down a tracker for a certification on things you don't know, and you're rating yourself like 1 to 5, and you're going through all these things, nobody else has that paper, right? Nobody else is going to read that paper. And if they pick that paper up, they wouldn't even know what it meant, right?
Right.
So who are you hurting by like, I'm a 5? And really, you're like a 2.
Sure.
I'm the first one to say I'm not an expert at Python. I want to be, but what does it take to do that? Mm-hmm. Keep doing it, right? Like keep progressing. And I think, a lot of times we get bogged down and caught up in the end state of where we want to be versus, look, you want to keep that goal, whether it's certification, it's it could be anything. It could be a medal from a race. It could be a lot of different things you want to do. You want to have a goal. It could be anything. You want to have that goal. But what I am definitely learning recently, especially with the illness in the family and myself getting sick a while back and going through all that and the recovery and all these different things, being a father, is that you set this. You do not set this entire path to get there. As much as you want to. You're like, I bought every book that says what I need to know between here and there, but life will hit you with those books.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Things happen between here and there. But here's the thing that I've learned from my friend Jim Cook I was telling you about. You set your destination and you keep your eye on it. Mm-hmm. And imagine you're going towards a destination, you will go off course. Yeah. You will go off course because of health, because maybe you lost your job, maybe a pandemic happened, who knows? Yeah. All these different things, and all of a sudden your company's gone, or your job, everything it just changes. It's all fluent. But if you keep coming back to, I want to get to that destination, no matter what happens, as long as you're there and alive, you will get to that destination. Yeah. You're just you're course correcting to get there, right? And I think that's the biggest thing in that 7 Habits of Effective People, as well as the one about the families. He mentions an airplane. Yeah. And every time an airplane takes off, even though it knows the route and it knows where it's going, it's off course. I think he said like 70 to 90% of the time. Mm-hmm. Even though it's going towards it, it's constantly having to correct. Even if it's not manual, it's constantly having from wind variations and other traffic and things like that. It knows where it's going. It's still working on getting there. It might take longer. It might be a bumpy ride. So I think keeping that in mind does help me anyway. Hopefully it helps you too, or somebody.
No, I definitely roger that. I think part of the reason I wanted to start this podcast, and also I'm always like you, I'm always interested in hearing about people's journey, is I think I see a lot of younger people and maybe older folks as well, is they compare their day 1 to other people's day 10, or to other people's day 100 or whatnot. Right. And that's not a very smart thing to do. Is you might look at somebody like Jason yourself, you're multiple 4 and plus book authors, and you teach all these classes, and you're, CCIE, twice the CCIE, all of that. But that is your accomplishment today. That's, you like you said, you started out from, not knowing config T at one point, not knowing,
absolutely. Or
but
you learn config T, but you don't know how to apply it because you can't figure out how to get the console cable into the device, right?
Yeah. So, how do you get out of Vim?
Like what Vim? Like okay. I mean, it's you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, I'm sure folks probably do look. And there was a meme, and it's so funny. I saw this picture, and it really hit home to me. And it was this cartoon, and it shows this guy in this big truck, and he's looking over at this guy in the sports car and says, I mean, I really want that car. Then there's the sports car guy looking over at this other guy who has this other thing. I mean, I really want that motorcycle.
Yeah.
And then there's a guy in a bicycle looking over at, and he's like, man, I really want a car. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like you're constantly always want what the neighbor has. The grass is always greener, sort of thing. And you're always comparing yourself to how that other person's journey is going. But
right.
The truth of the matter is, there's a kid. I'm going to give you an example, right? I've been in karate, literally, I'm not kidding you, for probably over 30 years. All right. I've been in karate for a majority of my life. I have mostly Shotokan, but I've also done Kempo. I've done Japanese weapons. I've done a million different things, right? But I've been with Shotokan for the longest. I had to stop and start from scratch 3 different times. And I'm just now starting the process to go for my black belt. All right. And I was in a class probably about 3 weeks ago, and I'm going to say, I'm not even gonna lie. He's a kid. A kid came in. I think if we asked him, I think he said he was like 9. He might have been 10. He might have been 10.
Yeah.
Black belt.
Nice.
He literally comes up to like my mid stomach.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Like what? And I'm like, how is it? And then I stopped myself in my brain. I'm thinking, how is that even possible?
Yeah.
But you don't know what that kid did for 8 years, right?
Yeah.
If that kid woke up every day, his dad might be a 10-time, master black belt or something, right?
Sure.
You don't know what he went through. And his whole focus and dedication might have been on martial arts, where mine was starting to go through technology, right?
Sure.
Because same thing with, with anything. Like if I spent this much time that I do this doing artwork, I still probably won't be a good artist, but I a better chance of being an artist, like I play the guitar a lot. If I started actually spending all this time recording and doing these things, I who knows, I might have had an album by now, right? But
10 albums.
You can't compare your 10 albums. You can't compare your journey to somebody else's, because everybody starts in a different spot. Everybody has different legs up. Everybody else has other folks to help them. It's like everybody's completely and utterly unique. And I think realizing that for myself was a very hard one.
Yeah.
Because, that's the thing. It's like, why is this person doing this? Why is this person doing that? Who cares? There was a comment that Michael Phelps made. They were talking about when he was racing somebody in one of the Olympics, probably, two Olympics or so ago.
Right.
There was a conversation about the guy kept popping his head out and looking at what the other swimmer was doing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you lost. Why? Because how much time did you waste trying to focus on this other person, that if you would have kept your head down and kept going, you might have won. You know what I mean? That gold medal. Right. and that's literally, it's that close, right?
Yeah.
You're spending all this time doing that. He's underwater like a dolphin, right? I mean, you're like,
right.
So it's keep your eyes in your own lane.
Yeah.
It's always good to ask for help. And anybody who is worth listening to from a help perspective, will always encourage you on that. They won't say, well, blah, blah. If they put up any kind of fight to share information with you, or they make it like, well, it's like some big ordeal to share information or help you on your journey, then they are not being forthcoming, and they're probably not the person you want to listen to anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's very true. I think that's probably a good point to end our podcast. I mean, we could go on for another few hours, but
yes, we've been on for a while. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. No. This is great. I wanted to ask you, Jason, where can people follow you? Where can people get in touch or follow you on the various channels or whatnot? So I have, for those of you on YouTube, you could see the metaldevops.com. We'll put the link in show notes. We have Jason's Twitter. And is there any other place that you'd like to share so people could get in touch with you?
Yeah. So I'm Jason _Gooley on Twitter and Instagram.
Yep.
Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm really good about LinkedIn. I'm on there 24 hours a day. It feels like anyway. The other thing is techbookshelf.com is coming. There's no website there. I need to put a placeholder up, and that's going to be to build that all out. There is a Tech Bookshelf Facebook page. And then one of the things I'm starting, it still hasn't gotten off the ground, which is part of this that contest that I did a while back, is the network developer. So there's a YouTube channel called the Network Developer, and it's got the picture of that little funny sticker, the Godfather sticker, thanks to Sylvia on that one.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So that it's just that on there right now. It just as a placeholder. I needed something to put up there to tell folks to follow it. I'm going to start doing things like this, but I would love to have you on as well, and to talk about little mini fun projects to do exactly what we talked about here. To get started. Just get started. Yeah. And let's get it going. I think that'd be the best way to do it. So thank you all so much for having me, and thank you for having me on. Thank you all for listening and to me yammer on again. I appreciate you all, and dude, thank you again.
No, thanks, Jason. I mean, I've always known you're a great technical leader, but this time it allows me to actually hear some other side of you. We'll also obviously put links for your Twitter and the Facebook page and all the other technical resources that we've included. I know I'm gonna have a busy post-production because I need to look up all these books and put links to them, but I appreciate all the resources you share.
Absolutely, thank you so much, and we got to do this again sometime. And I'll definitely have you on Metal DevOps or the Network Developer or both, and we'll do something. I think that think tank idea, I think that might, if you're up for it, maybe me and you could put something together where we can help some folks. Put some thought around helping the community as a whole.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks again, Jason. Thanks for making the time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Network Automation Nerds podcast today. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other podcast platforms. Until next time, bye-bye.